Welcome to the Ukraine special. I've been thinking about this for the past few days, wondering how I was going to communicate everything that I know and uh, make it digestible, and make it reasonable, and make it interesting. Um, Again, I watched 20 Days in Mariupol. I just watched the two soldiers, first-hand witness accounts of Bakhmut, and that's not nearly enough, right? And again, I've been trying to keep myself away from this stuff, because I have my own issues to deal with. I have my own leviathans to fight over here, and it's easy within the absurdity of our standard of living here over in North America, to just ignore and then resent each other for our prosperity. In the absence of faith, or of something that unifies the society, humanity has a tendency to create something to take its place. Like, no matter what, any atheistic non-religion then becomes a belief system, which then becomes organized loosely by association. And our belief systems are an integral part of who we are. Now, so is our history. And when I went to university, I was naive. I was sheltered. I was protected. I really didn't have many interactions with people of differing values and belief systems. Even though my high school made an effort to have us go and visit the mosque, go and visit the synagogue, go through the world religions and everything. At the end of the day, it's just on paper. It's abstract. It's not a practice. It's not living. It's not better living through spirituality, or through therapy, so to speak. And I was confronted with a lot of things, especially my, I don't know if I want to call them learning disabilities or not. In all likelihood, there's probably nothing wrong with me. But our society is so concerned about, or at least within the culture, is so concerned with productivity culture. And I'll make a reference to Al. Let's see, what's her name? Okay, so where's the remote? Huh? There it is. The dog likes to lay on the remote. Anna Fern, um, who has a distinctively Russkiy accent, if I'm correct, somewhere in there. And there's historical regional conflicts within that area, that we don't really understand. And it goes back hundreds of years. And quite frankly, the Ukraine is a relatively new country. And I say that with some with a bit of humor, because a lot of people attitudes towards Canada as a country, it is about the same. Oh, it's a new country, right? In comparison to other European schools of thought and conception. Um, but that doesn't matter. And I want to do, I failed. I'm academically suspended as it is right now at Trent University. I completed my college courses, my certificates, and I'm okay with that. But, I think a lot about what could have been. If some people had just made a few different decisions, and some people just weren't so serious, and if some people were more understanding and had more time to sit with me and to talk to me and figure out what was actually going on, because I myself didn't know what was going on. Like I said, I got my own problems to deal with. Um, beyond this. But this is absurd, that I can sit here in the comfort of my own home with my dog and talk about a civil war in the Ukraine. Now, this paper here, again, this is from CIUS, right? CIUS-scrs.gc.ca/emg/oprat/ct_ehtml. And this is dated January 17th, 2005, which falls in line with my visit to Scotland and my contacts through 6 Degrees of Separation with MI5. Now this is about counterterrorism. This paper. And I'll be honest with you, this paper is one of the inspirations for the beginnings of the history of propaganda. And I'll read from this. I'll read from this first, because a lot of things in Canada, to change the context and then relate it as a Canadian to the Ukraine conflict, and say even the more developing conflicts within Israel, because a lot of the censorship that we've been enacting and putting into law, seeks to silence even information as good as this. Because, there's just some things in the world that we have to talk about, and it's going to offend people no matter what. But when people get offended, that means that they have skin in the game, so to speak. They have a vested interest in your silence and your lack of resistance. And there's been some people within the world's the human family, and then again with new information, whether or not we want to classify them as human beings because of the five origins, right? Because out of Africa theory is bullshit. Out of Africa theory is bullshit. It's a theory. It's incorrect. It's been disproven. Let's be clear about that. So the cultural superiority complex, or the or even the inferiority complex, in which misinformation is used to prop up within the mind sphere, which is online, right here on YouTube and other places, which are even more in the shadows, that we got to bring it to light, if that makes sense, in connecting that sentence together. So I'll read from this first. Terrorism is not a phenomenon unique to the modern era. Viewed from a historical perspective, examples of terrorist behavior abound. The Jewish zealots conducted a campaign of terror against the Romans in the 1st century AD. A Shia Muslim sect known as the Hashashin, which is the assassins, if I remember that comes from, yeah, that's what it says, which gave us the English word assassin, systemically murdered those in positions of leadership and influence in the 11th century. Modern terrorism, as we know it, began in the early 1960s, with 1968 marking the beginning of international terrorist incidents. With the worldwide explosion of extremist groups and incidents in the 1970s, terrorism assumed a much higher profile in international media and therefore in the consciousness of people in countries that, to date, had not been directly touched by it. In our time, the use of serious violence continues to find practitioners within established terrorist organizations as well as the new and evolving groups. Enmities and I can't enmities. Uh, that word it makes me laugh. Like those in the Middle East, Turkey, and the Punjab, as do associated terrorist groups, sponsors, and international links. So international financiers. The growth of Islamic extremism, hostilities in the Balkans, conflicts a number of former Soviet republics, and turmoil in other areas represent some of the factors spawning recent terrorist threats. It's funny how history repeats itself, isn't it? Since the early 1990s, secular terrorism has given way to religious nationalist attacking foreign citizens and the agents and symbols of secularism in their own country, and increasingly taking their campaigns of violence abroad. Terrorism today is complex and fluid, with reduced emphasis on a formalized group structure typical of terrorist insurgents in the past. This is particularly true of Islamic extremist groups identified in the majority of incidents described above. Individual terrorists are now more security conscious, better funded, and more resourceful than in the past. Equally worrisome, they are also less predictable and less tied to one group. We have seen that they are not as hesitant as previous about forging alliances of convenience with other factions, or forging alliances with previous rivals. There's editing errors in this. We have seen that they are not as hesitant as previously thought about forging alliances of convenience with other factions or even with rivals in pursuit of worldwide terror. State sponsorship of terrorism persists, providing much needed logistical support for terrorist groups. Terrorist training centers continue to exist in Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa. Terrorist methods continue to become more sophisticated, both in the use of technology and exploiting public opinion and media channels. Terrorists today are globally mobile and knowledgeable about communications technology, computers, and explosives. In addition, they have contacts around the world. Their activities and targets are difficult to predict. The use of technology, more than ever a part of the terrorist arsenal, has been enhanced by encryption and the internet to facilitate communications and reach a wider audience. As well as intense media interest has resulted in the diffusion of images of terrorism well beyond the sites of the attacks themselves, providing much added exposure to their cause. In early March 2002, the New York Times, citing unidentified government officials in the United States, reported that hints of Al-Qaeda's regrouping in Pakistan came from intercepted emails and other internet traffic. So that's all I'm going to read for now, because it doesn't necessarily change the context. But the attitudes of certain religious identities and ethnic groups are exacerbating world conflicts as they are right now. And frankly, they always have been. You know, it doesn't change why people are fighting, but what it does change is the context as to why, or so as to what they're fighting about. And again, the people, if Russia has to conscript people, they're very desperate, and years of governmental sanctions and hate for one's own people has influenced the decisions at large. And war profiteering is a thing. It's real. And since that's talking about the sandbox wars in 2002, the parallels between then and say the wars, I don't know, the Ukrainian war and the war in Israel, which I'll call a genocide because it is. The war in Israel is not a war, it's a genocide. And, there's different ways to accomplish genocide. But the easiest way is to get people to kill themselves so that your hands are morally and ethically clean. But there are no secrets in the age of information in the post-internet epoch. Um, I have unfinished business with my life and myself from, say, 15, 20 years ago, because of what I witnessed and what I didn't do because I was not prepared and I was not educated to fight those battles. I was just a teenager. So other things that I have here, which may have skewed people's opinions of me, especially because, well, I'm blonde hair, brown eyes, and I probably look like a Nazi. Okay, with this shaved off my head and all that, and I was gung ho about fighting these people that brought insecurity to my homeland. And since we're all territorial, that's usually the normal and natural response. It's not, in my opinion, discriminatory to have an aggressive attitude to immigrants and immigration when it's appropriate. So moving forward from that, even if you learn the language of Germany, which is what this is here. This is highbrow German here. This is not commoner. This is not commoner German. That other factors become other things become determining factors in decisions that change people's lives, good or bad. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, in a lot of cases. So, I bet you that because of what I was taking, people were very nervous. They were very nervous about me. That I was taking IDST. I was taking philosophy. I was taking political science. I was taking economics. I was taking history, of course, Russian and African history. I took astronomy too, and it wasn't for me. I because it just again, learning disabilities or something like that. I never really got explained. I never really got the help that I needed because of religious attitudes towards the secular world, and that was a disability in itself. Basically, cut off our nose to spite our own face, because that's what would develop my animosity towards religion and organized religion, anyways, and even my own family at times, not even wanting to be around, not even rejecting the evangelical and embracing the holistic. That's that. And religious attitudes are one of the factors in the war in the Ukraine, as well as cultural attitudes towards each other, and multi-generational revenge. Right? Let's call it as it is. Or just some people are bellicose and they wanna fight people. They wanna shoot someone random. They wanna see someone blow up right in front of them. And frankly, I don't see why you would want. Okay, yes, I could, because at times I do feel the feelings that would motivate someone to kill. That doesn't mean I want to. Okay, let's be clear about that. Doesn't mean I have. Thank you very much. It becomes macabre, and it becomes sadistic, because it becomes so desensitized and burnt out. You know, as they were saying in that first-hand account, you know, after a few days, you know, the one fellow didn't even recognize his own brother, his own dead brother. And so, you know what? Furthermore, you know, I grew up in an age within university where there wasn't chat GPT and there wasn't social media. The social media did not exist in 2005, 2006. You know, it was the very beginnings of Facebook. And I was one of the first adopters, thanks to my roommate. But rumors, you know, and misunderstandings and the bitter, vicious nature of and immaturity of young people is exactly why individuals like myself end up in the place that they're in. In other words, I feel left out, I feel forgotten about, I feel discriminated, and I feel ostracized because of my resistance to idiocy. So what I have here, again, are very important books, and this is my reader from my history of the Russian Empire, as it is. So I wish to do my professors a favor here, if they're still alive and they still get to see this. That, you know, your life is worth something. You see, communism was German and is German. It's a German, it comes from the Enlightenment, so of the 19th century. The problem is when the Communist Manifesto was this is always the argument, right? This is always the no true Scotsman thing. And this came from, well, when I was in college. This one's from the Fanshawe bookstore. $9 for this. $9. The problem with the Communist Manifesto is when it's applied to an entire society. It was never intended for that. It was intended to form trade unions. So, and you know, as it is with the college system within universities, you know, the key to power is knowledge. And when someone has too much knowledge over other people, especially within the old world, where you know, again, social media didn't exist in 2005, right? There was MySpace, there was message boards, but the conception of a phone book for people on the internet didn't exist, and that's what Facebook started out as. It started out as a phone book. It was not this huge monster of productivity culture and of you know, this time suck. Do you remember that, Zuck? When Facebook wasn't such a huge time suck? The next book that I have here is Revolution of Peter the Great. Trent University Bookstore. $928.08. This is why you don't throw things away as a historian, because even your own story is important. Don't throw away your textbooks, and don't throw away your readers either. Put them on a bookshelf where they belong. So I'm not going to start at the very beginning of the Russian Empire. That would take me, I don't know, months to put together. Because Russia is one of the oldest civilizations, let's put it like that, in human history. You know what? This is good. Behind the official story, in Domination and the Arts of Resistance, Hidden Transcripts, 1992, Yale University Press. If the expression "speak truth to power" still has a utopian ring to it, even in modern democracies, this is surely because it is so rarely practiced. The disassembling of the weak in the face of power is hardly an occasion for surprise. It is ubiquitous. So ubiquitous, in fact, that it makes an appearance in many situations in which the sort of power being exercised stretches the ordinary meaning of power almost beyond recognition. Much of what passes as normal social intercourse requires that we routinely exchange pleasantries and smile at others about whom we may harbor an estimate in not keeping with our public performance. Here we may perhaps say that the power of social forms embodying etiquette and politeness requires us often to sacrifice candor for smooth relations with our acquaintances. Our circumspect behavior may also have a strategic dimension. This person to whom we misrepresent ourselves may be able to harm or help us in some way. George Eliot may not have exaggerated in claiming that there is no action possible without a little acting. The acting that comes of civility will be of less interest to us in what follows than the acting has been imposed throughout history on the vast majority of people. I mean, the public performance requires those subject to elaborate and systemic forms of social subordination. The worker and the boss, the tenant or sharecropper to the landlord, the serf to the lord, the slave to the master, the untouchable to the Brahmin, a member of a subject race to one of the dominant race. With rare but significant exceptions, the public performance of the subordinate will, out of prudence, fear, and the desire to curry favor, be shaped to appeal to the expectations of the powerful. I shall use the term public transcript as a shorthand way of describing the open interaction between subordinates and those who dominate. The public transcript, where it is not positively misleading, is unlikely to tell the whole story about power relations. It is frequently in the interest of both parties to tactically conspire in misrepresentation. The oral history of a French tenant farmer, Voltaire, covering much of the 19th century, is filled with accounts of a prudent and misleading deference. When he, the landlord who had dismissed his father, crossed from La Croix going to Milieu, he would stop and speak to me, and I forced myself to appear amiable in spite of the contempt I felt for him. Old Tienen prides himself on having learned, unlike his tactless and unlikely father, the art of dissimulation so necessary in life. The slave narrative that has come from us from the U.S. South also refers again and again to the need to deceive. I had endeavored so to conduct myself as not to become obnoxious to the white inhabitants, knowing as I did their power and their hostility to the colored people. First, I had made no display of the little property or money I possessed, but in every way I wore as much as possible the aspect of slavery. Second, I had never appeared to be even so intelligent as I really was. This was all colored at the South. Free and slaves find it particularly necessary for their own comfort and safety to observe. So what he's talking about is the narcissistic mask, right? How do you look at yourself in the mirror, and how do you treat other people? And how do we treat other people online? And how do we judge them for the snapshot that we actually have of them? How much do we judge Russia for wanting their historical homeland?